All right, well, we're going to get started. Thank you guys so much. I know I recognize some of you from earlier. Thank you so much for being here and for hanging out. I'm still getting used to these planes. I thought it was wind. I guess maybe, I don't know how many. Are any of you guys from here? You're from here?
Yeah, it's the Air Force.
Okay, so I was like, is that the wind? What's going on? This is wild. I learned it's not the wind, it's an airplane. Okay, well, I'll introduce myself quickly. I know I introduced myself earlier to a few of you, but for those of you who I haven't had the opportunity to meet, my name is Katelyn, and I'm coming to you from Kalispell, Montana. I'm part of a church called Fresh Life with Pastor Levi and Jenny Lusko, and I have been on staff at Fresh Life for 6 years as of yesterday. It's my staff birthday, and I'm finding any reason to celebrate. So, yeah, I'm the digital communications director, so I oversee social media, digital marketing, some web stuff, and the video team falls under me, and I work with an incredible creative crew of designers and video people and all the fun stuff. And I'm really excited, actually, for this talk. I think you're in God's favorite breakout, and the people who aren't here are missing out, because I'm really excited for just what I feel like God's given me to share with you guys. And so I have a husband at home and 2 boys, a 6-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, Roman and Porter, and they're the best, and they keep me busy, along with this wonderful job and this ministry that I get to be part of. And so that's a little bit about me. So we're just going to dive right in. We're going to talk today for a few minutes about how to survive in social media, in the digital space. Social media for you might look like strategy, posting, scheduling. It might look like designing. It might look like video. It might look like all of the above if you're the one who's doing all of the things. But I think no matter what exactly it looks like for you, I'm praying and believing that these things that we're going to come around today are just going to help you. They're going to encourage you. I've formulated all these points. There's 10 of them, but we're going to get through them all as declarations, things that you can hold on to and speak over yourself and over your life. I think most of us, since we're in here, wouldn't say that, I'm really just like hoping to slink by, do the bare minimum, and be out of here. Like, I think, like Scott was saying yesterday, like, we want to run hard and we want to run long and we want to put our roots down deep and dig into what God has for us and do a good job. Like, we want to be all in. We want to be committed to the vision. That's the goal. That's what I think, and I hope and I pray all of us would say, and we would feel and we'd resonate with that. We want to be all in. And if that's true, then we have to set ourselves up in a way that we are poised to do that we're healthy. So we're going to talk about how to stay healthy, how to stay creative, and how to stay the course. That's kind of what we're going to get into a little bit, because I think, yes, we rely on God for his strength and for this calling that he's put on our life, and we believe that. And so there's that side, asking God to do what only he can do, but then there's us doing all that we can do to stay healthy and to stay committed and to be able to stay the course for however long that is that God would allow us to be in a role like this. Being all in doesn't mean that God's never going to call you to leave. Being all in is not synonymous with forever. And so it's sometimes, I think, if we're maybe new to the role, or you're in college or it's transitional or whatever, we can think like, oh, I'm not going to be here for a long time. But you can be all in and put your roots down deep and serve God with all of your heart, no matter where you are, for however long you're there and however long he allows you to be there. And so for us right now, that's in a creative space, that's in a social media way, a graphic design way, whatever that looks like for you. And so we're just going to talk about how to do that. Stay the course, stay creative, and stay healthy. The digital space, I was just talking with someone earlier, is hard. It can be so hard in a lot of ways. It can be overwhelming. It can be like, it's time consuming. It can be taxing on your spirit, on your soul, on your body, on your eyes. Like, it can be a lot. And so we're going to look at these 10 things of what I believe it looks like to be healthy in this role. And you might not feel all of these things all of the time. These are all set up as a sentence. To survive in social, I will fill in the blank. And so they're all going to be that way, and they're all formulated as like declarations, as statements, and you might not feel all of these things all the time or feel like they're all true all of the time, but there's always areas that we can be growing. There's always, it's always good to be looking to like, what can I be doing? Where can I be growing? Where am I doing well? Like doubling down on what's working. What's leading you to this place of being healthy and being creative? So we're going to just get right into it. To survive in social, number one is I will be invigorated by the challenge, not frustrated by it. I will be invigorated by the challenge, not frustrated by it. There are challenging things about being a creative. There just are. And I believe that to the degree that we can see a challenge, face a challenge, see something not working out, something not performing the way that we thought it would, something not turning out the way that we thought it would or that we hoped it would, to the degree that we can see that, face that, and our response be that we're fired up to get back at it and to try again and to do it differently, is the degree that we'll be able to keep going in this role and in this capacity and in this space. Our response to things not going our way should be, what could I do differently? Why didn't this work? How can I do it differently next time? Instead of throwing our hands up in defeat and being like, I'm terrible, this was the worst, this isn't how I thought it was gonna look, like I worked so hard on that post and it didn't do anything, so there are these difficulties, but to the degree that we can analyze it and be invigorated by it to get back at it and to try again is the degree that we'll be able to stay healthy and keep going. This is a picture of persistence. Persistence is the quality that allows someone to continue doing something or trying to do something, even though it's difficult or opposed by other people. We need to be set on fire by the idea of continual improvement and continually growing and being okay with things not working out the first time or not doing well or performing or whatever that looks like. Every challenge is an opportunity to grow. Every challenge is an opportunity to grow. And I think a lot of times when we think about growth, what we see or what we think about is like an up and to the right. Is this the right way for you guys? Am I backwards? You just see this like, this is growth, right? Like hopefully a trajectory in the right direction. You know, this is how we see growth. But I think my pastor taught me this. A lot of times growth doesn't look like this. It looks like this, right? Like this is, and do you know what this involves? Walls, things that you're going to run into, things that are hard, things that you bump up into that are not awesome or don't feel good, difficulties, right? So when you hit a wall, when you hit a roadblock, when you hit something not working out, that is an opportunity for you to rise to the next level and to grow. So you can either hit that wall and get stuck there, or you can say, this is an opportunity for me to grow. This is an opportunity for me to become a better creative, to grow in this way. And so we need to look at those roadblocks as an opportunity to grow and be not just okay with the challenge and not just being okay with things being hard, but being like fired up by that, being like, yes, this is an opportunity for me to learn and to grow and to do it differently next time. So we should be able to say things not working out make me want to dive in and not back out, right? We want to like keep going and we want to push through that. If we want to survive in this role, in this space, in this creative way, we need to be invigorated by the challenge, not frustrated by it. Number 2, I will be flexible and quick to pivot. I'll be flexible and quick to pivot. If you haven't noticed yet, social media is changing fast. It's always changing, and it will always be changing. If you're a designer, like the things like visually that used to work might not work anymore, or they might just like style changes, approach changes, platform changes, everything's changing all of the time. What worked last month isn't gonna work anymore. What worked last year is certainly not gonna work anymore. From a visual perspective, a video perspective, a strategy perspective, it's always changing. We are living in the biggest communication shift in the last 500 years. Like, we're just like, it's wildly different, and it's gonna keep being different, and it's gonna keep growing. And so in order to do this and to do it well, you need to be able to be flexible and to be quick to pivot. Otherwise, it's going to be frustrating and it's going to be super, super defeating. So being quick to pivot. So in basketball, this is like the most low-hanging fruit analogy I could give you. To pivot in basketball is to keep one foot planted. March Madness, any basketball people in the house? We're like going into March. Okay, thank you, one. Okay, besides the point. So in basketball, to pivot is to have 1 foot planted and 1 foot free to move, right? I don't think you need to play basketball to know that rule about basketball. And so being flexible and being quick to pivot go hand in hand. So there are things that we need to have a tight grip on, right? Like the mission, the message, the gospel, there's things that we're gonna have a tight grip on. And then on the other side, there's areas where we're gonna be flexible and we're gonna be quick to pivot in our approach, in like visually how things look, in our strategy, in the platforms that we're on, in the way that we're doing things. We need to be flexible and quick to pivot. There's a saying that I love. I don't know who said it, so I don't know who to give credit to, but I've heard it said, "Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken." I don't know if you've heard that. So there's just a strength in flexibility and in being able to change and move and be alert, to what's working, what's not, where can I pivot, where can I change? And to that degree, we'll be able to do this and we'll do this well. So I will be flexible and quick to pivot. Number 3, I will not be stumped by limitations. I will thrive within constraints. To survive in social, I will not be stumped by limitations. I will thrive within constraints. We all face limitations in some way, shape, or form, right? A limitation for you might look like, I don't have a big enough team. I don't have enough time. I don't have that budget. I don't have that authority or that freedom. I don't have the confidence. I don't have the creativity. I don't have the experience. These are all limitations. Has anyone felt any of the above? Like we all feel these limitations. And when it comes to being a creative, and especially in the church space, the enemy would love for you to focus on what you can't do so that he can rob you from what you could do and what you could be doing within the confines that you have. So the question that we should not be asking ourselves is, it's not what would you do with what someone else has, but it's what can you do with what you have been given. It's very easy for us to overestimate what we would do if we had that type of budget or that type of resource or that type of team or that type of pastor or whatever. It's very easy for us to overestimate what we would be capable of doing and underestimate what we actually can do with the authority and the resource and the budget and the team that we have been given. And so when you are facing any of these limitations, fill in the blanks, you know what that looks like for you, I would say a couple things. The first thing I would say is to just acknowledge it. The struggle is real. The struggle is real, okay? This conference has been amazing. The sessions have been amazing, and hopefully the breakouts have been amazing. But there's something just about being with people who do what you do, and you're like, me too. Like, me and Josh were talking earlier, and we're like, yeah, me too. Like, that, yes, that. Like, the struggle is real. We're all in it, and hopefully bumping up against people helps you feel a little bit less alone in the struggles and the limitations that you might be facing. It's real. So what's not gonna be helpful is pretending that the constraint or the limitation is not there. That's not going to be helpful. The constraints that you face might look different in different seasons. Some might be able to be moved through with growth. Some might be permanent. It's like maybe my building is some type of way I don't know, some things might just be permanently there, but it's not going to be helpful to pretend like you just have all the resource and all the whatever. So acknowledging that they're there so that we can move through them. So we're not saying that they're not there. We're just saying that we're not going to get held up by them. So it's real. And the second thing is that it's important. So constraints are actually where creativity thrives. So they're not only real, but they're necessary for you to get to the most creative end, right? So there are things that you can do within constraints that you couldn't have done if the constraints weren't there. So they're actually on your team, okay? So can I give you Dr. Seuss as an example? Is that okay? Can I do that in church? So Dr. Seuss's goal was to write books with as few words as possible. So a lot of creatives and artists do this, right? They strip back. Sometimes they create limitations if they don't have any. So they can get to that most creative end, and they don't complain about what they don't have. They pack as big of a punch with as minimal resource as possible. And Dr. Seuss did this. So he would impose like these false deadlines and false parameters. So he wrote the book, The Cat in the Hat, using only 236 English words. It's not a lot of words for a whole book. And when he turned it into his editor or his publisher or whoever, she said, I bet you can't write one using only 50. So there was already a limit, and then the limit got smaller. And you know what he did? He wrote a book called Green Eggs and Ham, which is the 4th best-selling children's book of all time, and it has sold millions and millions and millions of copies, and he only used 50 words. Like, he wasn't worried about all these other things. The constraints were actually liberating, and he did something that he couldn't have done if he didn't have those parameters on him in the first place. So the moment that we stop looking at these limitations that we feel as something that are against us, and we actually embrace them, as soon as we can do that and see them as something that's being on our team, the sooner we will be able to move forward as creatives and create better things and bigger things instead of being like frustrated by what we can't do. I talked, I know a few of you were there in my earlier breakout about multiplying content out of the messages that you already have and utilizing the resources and the message and the things that God's already doing in your church and making content out of that, which that's a picture of this, that you could think like, oh, well, I don't have like the team size or the designers or the people to be able to create some of these wild things. It's easier than ever to get on social and look at what other people are doing and think, I couldn't do that. But you can look at what you do have, like what type of resource and messages and what is God doing within your church that you can actually tap into. And it's a mind game, right? To refocus, like, yes, that's real. Like we said, that's all real. But as soon as we refix our eyes on what is within our parameters, we're gonna be better creatives, we're gonna serve better, and we're gonna probably have a better attitude while doing it too, because we're not gonna be so frustrated and disgruntled. So that's number 3. I will not be stumped by limitations. I will thrive within constraints. The 4th one, this one is my favorite. Well, one of my favorites. I will turn off my dang phone. And if you're taking notes, you have to write dang. You can't leave it out. I will turn off my dang phone. I want to tell you something that has set me free in this role, in this digital space. And I just want you to let it sink down somewhere deep in your heart and in your bones. And it's this. There is no such thing as a social media emergency. There is no such thing as a social media emergency. Yes, what we are doing is important and it matters. And it's actually a vehicle that can change people's lives if we do it right and we do it with the right spirit. But you can and you should turn off your phone. It seems so simple and it seems so easy, but you can and you should unplug, and you can and you should take a break. When you're on vacation or you're taking time off, it is your job, of course, to do your due diligence before you leave to make sure your team is set up for success and you have all the right things in place. We're not just like drop and run and like leave people high and dry. That's not what we're talking about. So you put in the work to make sure everything's set into place. There's things that can schedule things for you. There's a lot of different tools. And then when you're taking time off, you're not reachable. There is no social media emergency. So when it's family day, when it's date night, when it's a weekend, when it's your time off, it's so important that we recharge and we rest our souls. Hebrews 4:10 and 11 says, "For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their works, just as God did from his." So he modeled this for us. "Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest." So this is important. Like, this is in the Bible, people. This is important that we rest from our work. This year, for me, what this looks like is I'm setting out to do 1,000 unplugged hours. So I found this download from a girl named Hannah Brencher. I don't know if you're familiar, but she has this resource online, and it's just a piece of paper, and it has like 1,000 bubbles on it. And every hour that you're off your phone, You check off a bubble, and it's just a tracker to help me remember, like, I can't unplug. And if I want this to be sustainable for me, if I want to stay in this role and I want to stay healthy, it's so important that you prioritize that rest. Resting your body and your spirit and your mind and your eyes. Like, your blue light glasses are working overtime, and they can only do so much, okay? Like I said, this isn't just like neglecting your responsibilities. This isn't like, it's Easter weekend and I can't get a hold of homegirl. Like, that's not what we're talking about. Obviously, this is within wisdom. This is within reason. But we're just saying it's important that we prioritize the rest. There's no such thing as a social media emergency. You can take time off. When you're on, and you're working hard. And when you're off, you're off. If you want this to be sustainable and you want to serve God in this way, in a digital space, however that looks for you, it's so important that we prioritize that rest. Number 5, I will be a student of my craft. I will be a student of my craft. Never stop learning. And the fact that you're here says something about you already doing this. Never stop learning. There's something to be said about having a desire to be good at what you do and to keep getting better at it. I think there can be times when there's a wisdom to this, right? There's a line. But there has been times when the church has swung so far the other way of like, if you try to be good at what you do, that's just glorifying yourself or it's prideful or whatever. And there is a line where you can swing to that pendulum, of course. But I don't think it honors God either to just be like, well, this is as good as I am and this is as good as I'm ever going to get. Like, no, I think God has put this desire in you. He's put this gifting in you. He's put this skill in you, and he wants you to grow in it, not from a place of pride, but from a place of glorifying him and doing a good job at what you do. So if you're a designer, if you're a video person, if you are doing just social media strategy and all that stuff, it's important that we grow and we learn and we dig deep and we develop our style and we keep growing. You see this in Exodus 26, verse 1. You see it again in verse 26. In 28, I'm sure there are other places within this. They're talking about the intricate details of building the tabernacle. And in the Message paraphrase, it says something to the tune of, in these different verses, a skilled craftsman should do it. Consult with a skilled craftsman. And I don't know who said it downstairs in this most recent Q&A. One of them referenced something similar, like a skilled musician. It seems to me like God cares about the level of skill and the opportunity that's connected to it. He cares that we do a good job at what we do in the right spirit and the right heart that honors him and glorifies him. In verse 31 of that same chapter, Exodus 26, he talks about Bezalel and Aholiab. I don't know if you've heard about these two people in the Bible, but they were like the best of this crew that they were assembling. I think maybe they were like leading the crew. And it says God gave them skill and expertise and creativity and an aptitude for crafting. And they were selected to like be the people to lead this charge. And you don't get a sense that they were selected to do this because they were just like average and they were there. It's like, no, they were skilled craftsmen. They were good at what they did. And it says God gave them the skill. And I believe that for each one of us here, like God has put in you the things that you need to do what he's called you to do. But then it's our responsibility to hone that craft. Like, I don't think these people were just 2 years old and like born this skilled, right? Like there was something inside of them and then they worked at it and they grew at it and they put in the effort and they put in the energy to grow and to build this thing. So God has made you creative. He's put that inside of you. They said it downstairs, like you are made in the image of a creative God. And so then it's on us to just dig deep and to fight for that next level of creativity and that next level of excellence, and to never stop being a student, but to keep growing and to keep learning. And we live in a beautiful time where there's billions, I don't know if that's true, millions of free resources online and tons of ways that we can grow and tons of people that we can connect with that can help us in this. And there's so many different ways. Skillshare, I don't know if you've heard of Skillshare. I mean, YouTube, like there's so many different ways and outlets, and you can figure out what that looks like for you, but just that we're prioritizing the growth and the investment into what we feel like God has called us to do. So I will be a student of my craft. Number 6, to survive in social or as a creative in any way, I will have thick skin and a coachable spirit. I will have thick skin and a coachable spirit. This is twofold. I see this kind of in a couple ways. The truth of the digital world and the digital space is that it can be really nasty. It's just given a lot of people like a big microphone to have a lot of opinions and say a lot of things, and it can be nasty. And I think it requires us to have a level of like having thick skin, knowing when it is appropriate to respond to certain things and when we just need to let stuff like roll off our back. And there's a wisdom in that, but people can be mean. They can say things that don't sit well, or they can misinterpret maybe what it is that you were trying to say, or pull out one thing out of context. There's just things that can get under your skin that can hurt your feelings. We're humans, right? So this requires us building up thick skin by way of prayer and asking God for wisdom. Like, what does this require of me? Does this require a response? Do these people really want an answer, or do they just want to be mad? And just having wisdom of like balancing that tension. And so there's that kind of thick skin. But then there's another, and probably a more prominent and a harder one, is having thick skin and a tender heart and a coachable spirit when it comes to being led. Creativity in any capacity is vulnerable. And I'm sure there are nuances, even just in a room this size, of how our like leadership style is set up and how our creative team is set up. And if you have maybe a pastor over you or a creative director who's kind of like overseeing all of the things and approving all of the things and having a hand in all the things, or maybe you have a little bit more freedom than that, or maybe you are the person who's overseeing the people who are posting the things, like there just is a level of this like leadership, and there will be a time when feedback is a part of the equation, right? They talked downstairs a little bit about giving feedback. It's like when someone's not like good on the worship team, like how do you give that feedback? But there's the other side of the coin, which is receiving the feedback. And there's gonna be times where we have to receive hard feedback. It's just part of the creative process. And hopefully it's done in the right spirit and the right heart, and you have leaders who are like doing this with truth and with love. But there will come, from a creative standpoint, a time for critique and for feedback. And that's the type of thick skin and coachable spirit that is the other side of all of this. Coaching is a tool. It's not an attack. It's an opportunity to improve. And so we have to like remove our ego from the coaching, because it's not personal. Like when you receive feedback in any way, shape, or form, it's not personal. It's an opportunity to grow. The moment that you reject coaching, you've gone as far as you can go. There will be no growth beyond your capacity to receive feedback in a creative way and to grow out of that. You will have gone as far as you can go. Proverbs 12:15 says, "The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice." So there's something to be said about being somebody who can have thick skin, like this isn't personal, this isn't an attack on me as a person, this isn't connected to my identity, but a coachable spirit that says, yeah, I can do that. Like I can grow in that way, I can learn in that way, I can improve in that way, so that you can become a better creative and a better either volunteer or a staff position, a better employee. Like there is so much growth. And if you can be eager to receive that and have the thick skin and the coachable spirit to hear it, you will continue to grow in this space, and you won't get your feelings hurt as easily. And there's a like the humanity side to it too. Like it's okay if something stings, but we're not gonna sit there and hold on to that and harbor that. I have a girl on my social media team, and for Fresh Life's birthday, we did this like, it was just a little reel. It was a post, and it was like a birthday cake. And she made this reel where she did like with icing, like happy birthday or whatever. She wrote something. She was making this reel, and she sent it to me. And she was like, "Hey, made this reel for Fresh Life. Want to know what you think. Please let me know. Like, I want your honest feedback. Absolutely zero of my identity is wrapped up in cake decorating." And I was like, that's the spirit, right? Like 0 of my identity is wrapped up in cake decorating. Zero of your identity is wrapped up in this. It's not an attack. It's like, that's a spirit that's willing to grow. And I have been on the receiving end of hard feedback. I have sent stuff that has not gotten used or has gotten completely changed or whatever that looks like, and always in love and in the right spirit. But we need to be people that are like, zero of my identity is connected to cake decorating, to graphic design, to choosing a font, to choosing a color, to writing a caption, to making a video. Like, there needs to be a spirit that welcomes that wants that growth, and has the thick skin to receive it, and the coachable spirit that will take you so much further and protect you from dipping out of this role before your time is up, because God has so much for you in this. And I think it can be easy for us to get our ego in the way and to get our feelings hurt and then bow out before our time is up, because we brought something into the equation that didn't necessarily need to be there. So that is number 6. Number 7. We're flying through these guys. Number 7 is, I will stay connected to the vision. I will stay connected to the vision. This is the vision of your church, the vision of your ministry. If you are not on board with the mission and the vision of your church, which hopefully is centered on the gospel and, seeing lost people saved. Like, if you can't get behind the mission and the vision of this church that you're either working for or serving under, this might be harsh, but I'm going to say it. If you can't get behind the vision, this is the worst job in the world. Like, if you can't get, like, if there's nothing that like lights a fire under you to be like, yes, like I can get up, I can do this, you could probably get paid more somewhere else. And I mean that with all the love of my heart. Like, you have to be able to get behind what God has called your church to, what he's called your ministry to, whatever, if that's, youth ministry, or if you have a different hand in whatever facet of your church or ministry that is, there has to be something inside of you that makes your heart beat for whatever it is that God is doing through and in your church and through and in your ministry. Otherwise, you will burn out so fast. If there's no heart and there's no like steel in your spine for what you think God, or what you believe God has called you to and what he has called your church to, and like some fire in your eyes about what you get to be a part of, like, God could use anybody, but he's chosen to use us, and he's chosen to use your church to reach your community in the area that you're in. He could do that through anybody, but there should be something that excites us about, like, I can get behind this. I believe in this. I want to see this come to life. Otherwise, it's just going to be very frustrating. Ministry is hard work, and there has to be some sort of something in your heart that beats for the mission of your church, which is hopefully centered around the message of the gospel and people coming to know Jesus and finding freedom and finding life and experiencing the gospel. And so we have to, there has to be something in us that gets a little bit fired up about that. Otherwise, it really just is not an awesome job or place to serve or whatever that looks like for you. Simon Sinek said, working hard for something we do not care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. And there just has to be something about it that gets you fired up about what you get to do and what you get to be a part of, and God building his church, and seeing people come to life and liberty in Jesus and experiencing freedom and experiencing breakthrough, and just the gravity of like, thank you, God, for choosing me. Like, I get to be a part of this. There has to be something about that like stirs something up inside of you. Otherwise, it won't be fun. It won't be awesome. It'll be exhausting. It'll burn you out. I don't really know how else to say it. And so I would challenge you to think of, and if you know it, remind yourself often of this why. Like, why do you serve in this way? Why are you a part of the church that you're a part of? What is it that you feel God has called you to do and uniquely wired you to do? And keep that at the forefront, because it can get so easy to get caught up, like ministry's fast and it's busy and things are changing and we're going and we're doing things, and it can be really easy for it to just turn into like a monotonous thing if we don't keep that vision and that heart and that soul at the center of what we're doing and what we're getting to be a part of. And so I would encourage you, if you don't know or you haven't been able to articulate that why, like, think on why it is that you do this, and then keep it at the forefront of your memory and put it on your desk or stick it on your mirror, like somewhere that can remind you why it is that we're working hard to do this and why it is that we care about it, and so that it can be passion and not stress. Number 8 is to survive in social. I will stay in my lane. I will stay in my lane. I will remember what it is that God has called me to. It's very easy in the church space and in any creative space, really, to compare. It's really easy. It's never been easier than ever to like hop on to another church's social media platform or whatever it is and look at what somebody else is doing. And I guess this kind of connects to that earlier one of like the constraints, like not having these eyes that are like just comparing and bouncing around and feeling inadequate. We'll get discouraged and derailed so quickly if we have our eyes on somebody else's thing. And God has called you and uniquely gifted you to do what he's asked you to do. And the same for your church. Like, your church has a unique and specific calling, and he puts different burdens on the hearts of different people. Some people are more like mission-centric and, evangelistic, and there's just different giftings on different churches, and there's a special gifting on your church for what God has called your leaders to lead, and there's a special gifting on you and your creativity and your creative outlet and what that looks like for you, your creative expression. And so it's important that we remember what God has called us to do. We're not made to be like carbon copies of other churches or other brands or whatever. The second that we start forgetting the space that God has called us to occupy in the way that he's called us to do it, whether that's through the like visually or through the message or the content that you're producing, whatever that looks like for you, the minute that we start forgetting what it is that we are uniquely wired to do and uniquely called to do is the moment that we just become like a Walmart version of somebody else, right? Like, no shade to Walmart. We love Walmart. But I would make a terrible version of you, and you would make a terrible version of me, and my church would make a terrible version of your church, and your church would make a terrible version of my church. Like, the minute that we start getting all those wires crossed, we're going to be way less effective in what God has called us to do. And it's really easy to find ourselves in that place, especially when we spend a lot of time online. And especially as creatives, we can feel like a great sense of maybe inadequacy, or I don't know if I'm just speaking for myself. It can be easy for me to feel like, oh man, I'm not good enough to do this, or I can't do it like those people can do it, or they did it, I did it first, but then they did it and theirs is better. Like, I don't know, like we just get weird, don't we? Like we get our eyes going all over and we get caught up instead of embracing the creativity that God has put in you. Now, this is not to say that we can't be inspired by other people, other churches, and hopefully you're inspired by things outside of the church space too. Like, yes, there are a lot of churches who are doing incredibly creative things. I'm sure if I went to all of your social platforms or your churches, there's something inspiring and creative and a different outlet. But even outside of the church space, like there's a lot of brands that do really cool stuff, and there's something to be learned creatively, visually, perhaps, maybe not like method or message. I'm not like endorsing any brands, but just like the ability to steal like an artist. Has anyone ever read the book Steal Like an Artist? I would recommend it. It's written by Austin Kleon, and he talks about how nothing is original. Ecclesiastes said it first. There's nothing new under the sun. And so this idea of being inspired and stealing like an artist, but like everything is built from something that came from somewhere else, right? Like there's nothing new. It's just different things that you've been inspired by coming out in your own creative expression. And so how can you be seeing and looking on and being inspired by other churches, other brands, other people, and then amalgamating all of that to be your own unique expression and be the church that God's called you to be. In that book, he quotes somebody named Jim Jarmusch, and he says, steal from anywhere that resonates with inspiration or fuels your imagination. Devour old films, new films, music, books, paintings, photographs, poems, dreams, random conversations, architecture, bridges, street signs, trees, clouds, bodies of water, light, and shadows. Select only things to steal from that speak directly to your soul. If you do this, your work and your theft will be authentic. And so it's not to say we can't be like just eyes down doing what you're doing. Like God has made a whole world of creativity on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, but just everywhere, within brands, within signage, within store window displays, within creation. Like there's so many ways that we can be inspired. And I think that's just having our eyes open to see. And knowing that that inspiration can come from anywhere. I think if we're aware and we have our eyes up and looking, especially I feel like this when I travel a lot and you see new places and new buildings and new things, it's like, wow, there's a lot of creativity and there's not a shortage of ideas. And so it's just the wisdom to be able to be inspired and then to make its way out in your own creative expression. So we're not like ripping off or stealing, but being inspired, being fueled, and then remembering who it is that God has called you uniquely to be. Number 9, a couple more. Hope some of this is helping someone. Number 9 is I will make more room at the table. I will admit, this one is hard for me. I mentioned this in my last breakout. I'm not like the gold standard on how to build and optimize and deploy teams. I struggle because it's hard. And it's not because I don't need a team or because I don't have a million things that could be being done or because my plate isn't like overflowing with things to do. It's not because of that. It's just because I've always struggled to figure out, how does this make its way out? How do I do this? How do I utilize people and their giftings? And that hopefully there's a breakout for that, because I'm not exactly going to speak to all of that. But I will say, if you want to survive, you can't do this alone. It's a big plate to carry. And if you want to do it and you want to do it well, you can't do it alone. You have to do it in community with other people. But then you have to also like pull up a chair and invite people to do it with you. This past year at like a staff talk, we call it a staff summit that we were doing, my eyes were open to something annoyingly obvious. And it was groundbreaking for me, but it's like, yeah, duh. And it was on the concept of building teams, and someone had just posed the question, like, how did you get started? How did you get started doing this? And do you want to know how I got started? Knowing nothing. I didn't know anything. I just was excited, and I just wanted to be a part of my church. And so we do a summer internship program, and so I came on as an intern, and they just gave me an opportunity to learn. And they just took me by the hand, and they led me, and they showed me. And so there was like shadowing, I watched people do it. I walked with people as they did it. And so, and there were times when it was like, sink or swim, like try it out. Like, let's see, like correction and receiving feedback. And that's how I grew, and that's how I learned. And I think there is an importance to like systems and strategies 100%. Like how we onboard people and how we take care of them and how we foster our teams, it is really important. But I think if you're not at a place where you have this like fleshed out like plan of like, oh, they go through Planning Center Online and they go here and then they go here and they go here and they do this training and they do this onboarding and they do, like, that's where I would get stuck, being like, oh, I don't have all that, so I'm not in a place to like get people on my team. And so that would like stop me from feeling like I knew how to grow a team. And it can be, I think we need to fight for those systems and develop those 100%. But it can also be as simple as pulling up a chair and inviting somebody to do this thing with you. There are probably people in your church who would love to do what you do and to come alongside you and to help you and to do it with you, and giving them an opportunity to shadow you and work with you, and then giving them opportunities to fail and giving them opportunities to try. And it's just not saying no for people, right? I'm really good at saying no for people like, oh, they're too busy, or like, oh, they don't have time to serve on this team, or oh, they serve on another team. Is really easy because I'm like trying to protect them or something, like protect their schedule. Like, just don't say no for people. If you think you see a gifting in somebody, just invite them to do it with you. Like, hey, would you want to come be a part of what I'm doing on Sunday? You want to come in on the week after school and do this thing with me? Like, I think we can overcomplicate or get stuck because we don't have like a really well-rounded out oiled machine. So don't say no for people. There's a girl on our team named Brooke, and she's a part of our leadership college, and she came in and she loves photography, and so she started leading our photography team, and it just like popped off. Like, it exploded. She has all these volunteers, and we're like, Brooke, what's your secret? How do you do it? And she's like, oh, I just ask people if they want to take photos. And then I show them, and if they want to, then I bring them on, and I train them, and I teach them, and if they don't, I say, do you want to learn how to take photos? And sometimes they say yes. So then I bring them on, and I teach them, and I show them our systems, and it's like, oh, I can do that. You know, like I think sometimes we're just so quick to like not have the eyes to see people or to invite people or to think they don't want to, or that, oh, they don't know how, or they don't have the experience. But don't say no for people. Pull up a chair and invite somebody to do it for you. No, we don't want to like lower the quality or lower, you know, the expectation that you have for your team creatively. Like, you want to keep the bar high and you want things to be done well, because that is important too. But make space for people to come in and to learn with you and to grow with you and build a team in that way. So you can't do it alone. So to survive in social, I will make more room at the table. And the last one is this. I will detach my value and my worth from my work. And I touched on this just a little bit, but your value and your worth to Christ and to the people in your life are not connected to what you create. Your value is not connected to what you create. You are more than what you create. You are more than what you design. You are more than what you film. You're more than what you post. God cares more about you than he cares about your art. And God cares deeply about art. I think God is creative, and I think he cares. But God cares about you more than he cares about what you create. And the moment that we get our wires crossed on that, and I think this is a continual, like, check. This is something we have to, at least for myself, like to do on the regular, because we don't drift in a positive direction. Like, drifting always happens in a negative direction. And so if we don't keep reminding ourselves of this, I think it's easy for us to just functionally end up in a place where we're working for our worth instead of working from our worth and from what God has already put inside of us. And the moment that we get our wires crossed on any of that, and putting some kind of identity into what we create or what we do for the church, is the moment that things will go downhill for your relationship with God and for your creativity. Like, no, there's no benefit when you get those wires mixed up. 1 Peter 2:9 says, you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people. Like, you were chosen by God before you did anything for him. And I'm sure you hear this a lot, and I'm sure you've heard it this week, and I hope you hear it at your home church. But we can never remind ourselves enough that you were chosen by God before you did anything for him, before you served him in any way. You were loved by God before you brought anything to the table, before you created anything. You were valued by God before you lifted a finger. Your value cannot be connected to how well you're doing or how creative you're feeling or how inspired you're feeling or how well things are being received or how well you're being praised for what you're creating or what you're doing in your work. You will be tossed to and fro at an exhausting rate. You cannot attach your value to that. It's just not a sustainable way to be. And I think it's so easy for us to get so busy working for God that we forget to walk with God and make that the priority of everything that we do, because we're so close. And when you get this up close in ministry, it can become your job before it's like a relationship with God, and it's a walking with him, and it's a letting him give you your worth that's found only in him. Your value and your identity and your salvation my pastor likes to say, it's not based on you, it's placed on you. And it doesn't matter what you do or what you bring, you're valuable to God. And so I think we just need to remind ourselves this as we create, as we serve in ministry, in this capacity and at this level, that you don't need to earn God's favor. You already have it in Jesus. And so to the extent that we can do, to the extent that we do all of this, that we fight to stay healthy and to stay creative, we'll be able to stay the course. And we need to ask God to do what only he can do, like to infuse us with his strength and with his wisdom and with his spirit, and ask God to do what only he can do. And then we need to do everything that we can do to stay healthy and to stay creative and stay the course. And I believe to that end, we will not only survive in social, but we'll thrive in social. And it'll be a place where we can see God move in our lives and move through us to reach other people. And so I'm going to pray really quick, and then if anyone has any questions, we can just hang out for a little bit. But God, we thank you so much for this time, and we thank you for this beautiful calling that you've placed on each of our lives. And I know it looks a little bit different person to person, and what we might carry and what we might be responsible what we're responsible for might look different. But we thank you that you've invited us to the table, that you've given us a place. We know that you could use anybody, anywhere to do anything. And what a gift and an honor that you've invited us, and that you've filled us with your spirit, that you've filled us with your creativity. And so as we go from this place, from this moment, but even from this week, would you just remind us that everything that we're creating and everything that we're doing and everything that we're fighting for is to glorify you and to help people come to know you and to encounter you in a really special way, to experience redemption and breakthrough and new life. And we're grateful that you have given us a place, that you've given us a jersey on this team to be a part of what you're doing as you build your local church, and as you do it through social media and design and creativity. We just thank you, God, and we ask for your favor on the ministry, each of the ministries that's represented here, God, just that you would pour out your favor and your blessing and your spirit on each of them as they seek to glorify you, and to help more people come to know you and to find life and liberty in your name, God. And so we love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. Amazing. Well, thank you, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Thank you.